legacy is earned. That's what it says on the poster. And I think the general sentiment echoes the fact that Dmitry Bivol marks the best opponent for Canelo Alvarez since Gennady Golovkin. This is a tough one. This is one where you cannot guarantee victory. Okay, we can all joke about Canelo by unanimous decision regardless of what happens. But this isn't going to be easy. Certainly in terms of who can legitimately win. Canelo can definitely lose here. Bivol's mindset as a light heavyweight champion in his prime, one of many years, should be this guy's got no right coming up here. I'm going to jab his nut in, to use a Tyson Fury phrase. If Canelo Alvarez does indeed deserve to win, we're all nodding our heads if it goes to points, for instance, then he deserves more praise than he's already been getting in the past few years. But this showdown does need some context. There is no established number one right now at 175 pounds. Yes, a lot of people put Artur Beterbiev one above Bivol, but those guys haven't fought. Just like Stevenson and Kovalev never fought, there has been this unfortunate lack of clarity in the weight class, which is true of many of the weight classes in boxing, sadly. So if Canelo does win, it's a case of he's just defeated another good champion. He hasn't defeated the man. And if we're to go further down this slightly negative route, has Alvarez indeed adopted the Mayweather model of trying to outweight your opponents, wait for them to show some signs of degradation by fighting Bivol first and waiting for the already quite old Beterbiev to age that little bit more, so that when he fights the probably then 37-year-old, he'll be creaking a little bit and he won't present the same threat? Maybe it's so, maybe it's not. Maybe Ted Spoon just doesn't want to give Canelo Alvarez any credit. Regardless, Dmitry Bivol is the same age as Canelo. He has, okay, not as much championship experience, but he probably has less miles on the clock. The fact he's held that WBA title down for so long, he should have a lot of confidence, a lot of faith in insisting on his way of fighting when the bell dings. He's not going to forget how to jab and go into survival mode like Callum Smith did, nor is he going to melt in the later rounds like Caleb Plant. He is going to keep adjusting his distance, trying to jab, switch it to the head and body, and keep making life difficult for the full 36 minutes. He's not somebody who seems to have a tremendous punch selection, but perhaps that just gets down to the fact that you don't need to when you know how to deliver your basic punches correctly. He has a good 1-2, 1-2-3, the occasional right hand to the body. He hooks knuckle first off the jab. And outside of that, you don't often see many other punches with Bivol. But he keeps rinsing and repeating, keeping it long, and generally getting the better of things. Now, in his last fight, he fought the 6'3" plus Umar Salamov. Of course, having to punch upwards. This is going to be a lot easier on the shoulders, punching down on the 5'8" Canelo. But he has got to keep that little Mexican busy. I always say you've got to hold this guy to a higher pace. Canelo, he's improved in so many ways. His stamina is never going to be a strong point. It's always a bit stop and start with him. Though he comes forward more, he's not this relentless destroyer, contrary to certain results. Bivol has to keep him occupied. He has to try and use his feints. And he's got to try and go to the body to take it further out of his legs. Now, Golovkin was wary about doing so because he didn't want Canelo, who's so quick on the trigger in terms of counters, to catch the shot with his elbow and then whoomph up the middle with an uppercut. But you've got to dare to do that. You've got to get him so focused on defense that there's no option for the judges but to give it to the other guy based on volume. That has to be the Bivol game plan. The problem for Bivol is that he's not quite as quick as Canelo. And I'm not sure he has the necessary deterrent to stop him coming forward. We know what Canelo's going to do. He's going to be there with his high guard, leaning forward, edging closer, using head movement to foil your range finders. Edge closer again, and then look for the clever counters. You're going to see uppercuts, and of course you're going to see body shots underneath those elbows. If Bivol was a bigger puncher, I think perhaps if it had a few more knockouts recently, maybe Canelo would have been spooked and not fought him. But he doesn't seem to have a great uppercut. Canelo's going to be able to get close to this guy. And then even if the shots don't particularly hurt, there's always that flashy crispness to Canelo's punches. So if he can keep making the jabs miss, rolling underneath that hook off the jab, and then boom, one to the ribcage, you get the crowd to go, oh, that is just going to edge the rounds in his favour. And another problem for Bivol is that he seems to rely on quite a basic defence. Mostly uses his feet to get out of the way, and then just relies on putting both arms up. Now, Canelo is going to be able to manipulate that basic defence mechanism. We've seen him use one arm to feint before and then come up with uppercuts or go to the body. And there are clear gaps underneath Bivol's elbows. So I can see Canelo, again, being the quicker puncher, making him bite on certain feints and then landing some head-turning punches. I suspect unless Bivol can make this either a very physical fight, a very high-paced one, or truly threaten with punching power and make Canelo behave more than usual, it's hard to see where he gets his foothold. We know how Canelo is going to operate. He's going to come forward, he's going to put on the pressure, make you miss, look to counter. How does he stop that happening? This is a guy who isn't even a particularly big light heavyweight. How is he going to make his size truly count? What does he have to really fall back on? Because we know he is going to have to win his rounds very clearly. And he's probably going to have to win about at least 8 of them to be given a sniff of the scorecards. It's kind of lame the fact we always have to mention that whenever a Canelo fight going the distance is in question. But I think he's going to win this one legitimately. I think he's got the antidote to Bivol's efficient but kind of basic style. I see some videos banging about talking about Bivol's incredible skill. I don't see it. I think he's a very good light heavyweight. This is no Michael Spinks. This is no Bob Foster. He's not dealing with a monster here. Canelo has the skill set to insist on fighting a range that favours his style. Some of these rounds people may argue, hey, Bivol was more busy, but it's Canelo who's going to be landing the crisper, head-turning shots. And I think will deserve to win about 7-5.